Hello, Crystal.
Good morning or good afternoon, Marta.
Hi, good morning.
Is it good
I'm
morning?
pretty
Where
much in your same zone at the moment in Italy, but in
Italy?
general, I'm based in Ireland.
Okay, so you're saying it's the same time zone, or is it?
It's +1 in Italy, so.
Okay, yeah, because I'm in South Africa where it's usually the +2.
Okay. So we are 1 hour difference, so you are a bit ahead.
There we
Almost
go.
lunchtime for you.
Almost lunchtime, yes. Lovely to meet you. So you say you're normally in Ireland, but you're currently sitting in Italy.
Yes.
Tell me why you're there. Is it for business,
I'm
for
Italian.
pleasure? Okay.
I'm Italian, so I try to spend a bit of time here when I
Yeah.
can. And I came originally for the vaccine because they are vaccinating a bit earlier in Italy compared to Ireland. So I got my shot early and I enjoyed the sun. As you can see from the color, I'm generally not that tanned.
Okay, I was just going to say, you can see how fair I am. I can't even go in the sun. It's the middle of winter in South Africa.
True, it's the other side of it. I always forget that. We
Yes.
might be in the same zone, but you are on the other side. So it's.
I know, and it's hysterical, especially when we meet people on the other side. Because I mean, I'm sitting here in a jumper. I've got a heater next to me, and then you see someone sitting on the other side and they're drinking a lovely smoothie, and all you want is something warm.
Nice. It's the world is getting very global and interesting. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you for finding the time. And I already booked also the debrief assessment at the end. So
brilliant. Because it goes very quickly, and it's always good that once you've done this, to do it as soon as you can.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 5 years now, and I've seen the guys that kind of put it off. Hey, they find it very difficult. They end up having to redo the certification training because they've kind of forgotten or they've lost their confidence to do it. So sooner is better. You get to practice and experience it, which is a far better schoolmaster than sitting in a class and learning the actual theory.
I loved what we did, the peer thing. It was very, very, very helpful. And I really felt much more confident about after that. So I totally agree with you. And it's like, if you say so, to go for it as fast as possible. You are the expert, guys. A bit of trust brings you a long way. So.
Well, I just look at my own experience. I did it almost within, Derek flew to South Africa to do the certification, and I booked the first slot he had available.
Oh, wow.
But I remember thinking, oh my word, I'm so not ready for this. But it also, I think when you've committed to that date and time, it was around the time that there were all these fabulous public holidays over Easter in South Africa. And I remember everybody relaxing and enjoying their Easter weekend, and all I was doing was sitting studying. So it kind of pushes you to prepare as opposed to procrastinating. You think, no, I'll do it when I've got the time. I'll do it when I've got the time. And we know what happens when we've got the time.
Next time, it's the Monday you start the diet never comes.
Correct. And, and looking back, I'm so grateful. I keep thinking, I remember there was one other person on the certification training with us. She's never become certified.
Wow.
All that time and that money and energy for what? Okay, well, great that you were on the class, but you've lost out on an opportunity. And I think it's been 5 years. And despite reaching out to you and say, hey, come finish it. Oh, I'm not quite ready. I'm not quite ready. So no, the best way to get ready is to do it. And then you figure out the rest. So tell me
I think you're all doing a very good work in phrasing this clearly. And it's like if someone fall into the cracks, it's really kind of their fault because it's very clear how it's set. And I think encouraging environment as well, that helps not to look like it's an exam, you will be examinated, it's going to be bad, it's going to be tough. It's much more explained in a way, you learn, the purpose is for you to be successful, and obviously you need to be prepared, but so I think it's very nice as it's set. So
yes, and as you said, preparation, and that's really what I look for is when we do the certification, it's the preparation. Can you show that you've actually put in a little bit of time and effort? Because I know, believe it or not, when I say to people, the certification exam, it's not an exam. It's an opportunity for you to practice what you've learned. And it's actually the easiest of all your coaching sessions going forward. once you start coaching, you realize, like, if you get the certification one done, it's actually the easiest one done, because the reality is that when you're sitting with a real person's report, like I'm going to be taking you through, it's a different kind of preparation. You know, it's different skills that you bring to it, but it's also far more rewarding. You know, that's where the real joy and pleasure comes in using the tool. So yeah, I mean, it's
looking forward to it. And first to mine, I'm a bit curious to see how things go. I had the time to go through it quickly, so
yes.
I'm not hugely disappointed and not incredibly happy, but
right. And you know, let's see if we can address some of that. So first, tell me a little bit about what it is that you do and how you came across the Genos certification.
So I'm a manager at the moment, and I'm managing a larger team of about 27 people in a pharma company. So my journey before becoming a manager, I was interested in coaching. So I took a coaching certification. So I'm ICF certified as a coach as part of my career development within the company. So I have to say the company is very much supportive of this path. So now I became manager also through those skills as a coach, because I really position myself more as that type of manager, not a manager that has an MBA, a business background, and very much focused and interested on that aspect, and more on the people, on the growth, on those kind of areas. So now that I am a manager, my boss is very much interested in emotional intelligence. So it's always a matter of finding what you are interested in, what may help you grow, and also what your management see as important, as a sweet spot to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
So I spotted the Genos course, I think already a couple of years ago when I took my certification. And it was something in the back of my mind as I would like to do it. Let's see the opportunity. And when my boss manager, mentioned a couple of times, I'm a big believer in emotional intelligence, it's like, that's, the perfect line of that course, emotional intelligence practitioner. And so it's like, this will sell to him easy. And so I went for it. And now I'm planning, I'm transitioning now to a new role where I will not be a manager anymore, more on the science aspect. So I have opportunity to maybe look back and give the assessment to my previous team and be there and support them in their growth. Or, going forward, I will be part of a larger team and we can see with my new boss if we want to do something in that area. And plus, I do coach internally a bit as part of my 10%. That 10% you can do whatever you want. Because it's basically your spare time, so nobody consider that, and so that's another opportunity I could leverage this. So I'm very curious to see how this can go, and I want to make sure. Obviously, I'm starting now a new role, so it will be tough. I don't want to overcommit, but I would like in the next couple of years, to see how I can position this as part of my internal role. Obviously, in the future, I have a desire to maybe have my own practice. I set up my own company. I'm trying to do a bit of pro bono things to keep the coaching going also outside, because it's different to do it internally or with other people, particularly if they're interested in life coaching and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm busy but committed.
There we go. So that's a good start. And you know what? And that's you're going to be able to figure out as you engage with the product. It's almost beneficial to be within a company first, where you've actually got access to people and you've got that context, which makes such a difference as well. And then you've got the experience of the ICF side, which is fabulous. It makes this far easier to sort of integrate into what you're doing, because you've got that experience. So I mean, Marta, the purpose is for me to give you your own, a little snapshot of the experience that you're going to have with the coaching. Generally with coaching, you'll know from the ICF experience that coaching is not a once-off. Yeah, obviously with our interaction, it is a once-off, just to give you a little bit of hey, this is what can be done with it. But generally, these coaching sessions would span anywhere over, if it's a once-off with a client or a long-term relationship, depending on what it is that the client needs. But if I had to ask you the question, because really we've got such a little time together, in the little time, what can I do best for you that will give you the most value for our time together?
I think, honestly, I'm a very practical person. So, and I know this is what we are going to do somehow. So having 2-3 actions and maybe mindset or something that can really bring me medium long term, because I think I went through the assessment quickly because there is not that much time, so I was prepared to do it quickly, but I just managed to read the qualitative comment and I think I can take a lot also for my next role, and mainly a couple of mindset that I need to be thinking of when, because I'm a big believer that action comes from what you think. And so having the action tied to the mindset, I believe it's very important, because that's where the real change comes. So if I could tackle 2-3 action and maybe one kind of mindset that will help me to move in the needle in that direction, that would be fantastic.
Right. So let's see to what degree we can help facilitate that for you this morning. So I've got your report. And I mean, with the certification training, yes, the encouragement is that we don't send reports too far in advance. But, you know, once you get to know a client and they've had multiple experiences, that will change and you'll be able to figure that out. And for this express purpose is, we don't want you to go and read into things too much. Now, for a certified practitioner, it's slightly different because you've got some of the training now, you've got some of the skills and the knowledge, but it's also good for you to have a similar experience to what your client would have. One of the things that I will do for my own clients is I'll let them know that an hour before our actual session, your report will arrive in your inbox. So for the first time that we meet, set an hour extra aside. I'm going to ask that you put an hour aside to read your report before we meet. So our first coaching session is actually 2 hours long. So just little ways that you can help your clients better prepare for a session like this. But yes, you're a certified practitioner, so slightly different experience.
I was prepared, but no, it's very good to do this. I think particularly in the corporate environment, people are busy, and letting people know that they will need that. Also because it's more common to maybe have a bit of time afterwards for reflection. So it's very good that you let people know that they need a bit of time before that.
Yes, so they know, you know, book in your diary, you're going to book 2 hours. You're not going to book an hour. Our meeting will be for an hour, but you've got to book 2 hours for that session. So, you know, and I'm not going to go into too much detail with a lot of these things, because you could probably sit here and you're probably like narrating along.
I should tell you this, but I'm happy to listen.
And then also, you know, just so that you know, Marta, I do record these sessions. It's purely for my development as a coach, or if you would like a copy of it, it's purely for that purpose. I know a lot of the practitioners say, oh, please can I have a copy? It will just help me prepare. I'm not saying by any means that don't copy mine as, hey, that is the way to coach. It is just, you've got to bring your own coaching style to it as well. You know, who are you as a coach? What is it that you do? And always remember to bring that to whatever you do, because that's the authenticity that we often talk about. You know, now looking at emotional intelligence, we know, and you would have learned, that it's actually a skill that we can develop. But the more aware we become of our emotions, the more power we have in how we affect not just our own states, but the states of other people. So, you know, the science shows that we can only be aware for a few seconds at a time. So self-awareness is not something I can just say, oh, I'm self-aware today. I've got to keep reminding myself, I've got to keep checking in. How am I feeling from moment to moment? Especially because we know that we experience approximately 15,000 thoughts per day, anywhere from 15,000 upwards, depending on what we've got going on. And if the science also shows that, you know, in a normal day, at least half of them are positive and half of them are negative. But if I am aware of it, I'm probably far more aware of what state I am in as an individual, or potentially what state I could be triggering other people into. Now, if I'm less aware of it, chances are that I might accidentally operate in a state that I don't intend to. And that's really, you know, the power of emotional intelligence is when I'm aware, I can then proactively decide or intentionally decide what it is that I need to do. But it also means that sometimes we've got to learn the skills, which is really what this is all about, is what do I need to be aware of in terms of my behavior that has potential impact on other people. Now, also looking at the model, we know that in the rating itself, people will rate us on the average of how we show up. So they're not going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to measure you on that one day that you were absolutely at your best, or that one day that you were absolutely at your worst. They're going to go on average, on typically, what is it that I get from Marta? And that's probably where people are going to rate us. It also means that, sometimes we might learn the skills and behaviors. And you mentioned the word right in the beginning. We've got to be consistent. It's something that we've got to keep doing. I can't just do it once and hope people are going to go, okay, she's making a change. It's something that we've then got to persist in doing. So I've got a question for you. Looking at the 6 competencies of the model, which one stood out for you when you were going through the program as something that resonated with you?
I really loved authenticity, I have to say. First, because I believe it's something a bit peculiar of this program, somehow of this assessment that is slightly different of what I've seen in other, in Goleman's book and things. It's probably behind a lot of the things that everybody says, but seeing it spelled as its own, and it's something that really resonates with me. And honestly, also from my assessment, that's something I was very happy for, to see I'm rated very high in authenticity, very high, average, compared to the rest. It's something that it's really important to me, and I loved, as soon as I saw the model, it's very much the base of everything for me. So that's it. And then the other aspect, I think it's also emotional reasoning, so one is really the basic authenticity is below who you are, and emotional reasoning is kind of the opposite side of the spectrum, how you manage somehow together with positive influence to influence others. And it's very nice, this how they are spelled separatedly for people to understand and to focus on.
Yes, and that's very good insight. And as you mentioned as well, it's something that's very important for you. It's something that we hear a lot about, but we don't always know what makes up the behaviors. And so Genos has made it a little easier, where often people have said, authenticity, I want to be an authentic individual, but we don't necessarily know what behaviors make up an authentic person. And now we've got a good description of these are the behaviors that make up an authentic individual. And what are some of the things that I can do to appear more authentic? And it also just takes the concept out of our heads. This is what I know about authenticity, to this is how I want to live authentically, so that I can operate in a state where people see me as genuine, as opposed to untrustworthy. So it's also a very, really, really good concept. But looking at the rest of the competencies, do you have any questions about any of them? All clear?
No, Derek, by now it's all clear.
It's going to say Derek's done his job and you paid attention in class.
Yes.
And then looking at the example, do you have any questions on how we explain the example or the results here?
No, I think it's everything is very clear in terms of how the the distribution. There is one thing that you were saying about people will rate you at the average of what you show up. Any idea of how they will rate the level of importance? Because my feeling is kind of they will probably rate the level of importance at the kind of highest bar rather than at the average, just as a feel, because you feel, oh, that's very important, and you put it up there. Maybe in reality you don't average it that much. Do you have any insight on this or any thought based on your experience?
Yes, and that's a very interesting question. Now, we know that when we look at other people, we often have a higher expectation, especially when it comes to people in leadership. I might look at someone in leadership and go, well, you're a leader. I expect that you should know or should be able to do better. It might also be the way people look at you as an individual and go, based on what I know about Marta, I think, let's say I've got Marta and 5 other friends, and people see you as a little bit more, I don't want to say more important, but they place more value on perhaps your influence on people around you. They might feel that some of these behaviors are more important than they might set it for themselves. Or in most cases, we find that individuals, if I had to ask you, in most cases, what we see in the self-assessment results is that people place these far higher for themselves than what other people have placed it or rated it for them. So it's a very interesting, I mean, I think there's quite a bit of research that could be done around this, but I also know that they talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect, is where, depending on the position, depending on the culture of the organization, those are the kinds of things, the mindset. I mean, you spoke about the mindset earlier. This often gives us some insight into the mindset of the organization. You know, the higher this is, the higher the expectation is, you know, the higher the bar is, compared to when we've seen it low. It's like, okay, hang on, for the position, why have they set this lower? And sometimes it gives us insight into the culture of the organization or the role. But in the 5 years that I've done this, I think the lowest I've seen it is fairly important. I'm trying to record if there's anything lower than fairly important. And so what that also tells us, Marta, is that the behaviors that we're measuring in the Genos assessment, you know, when they did that whole factor analysis study that they spoke about in one of the sessions, where Ben kind of, they got rid of the stuff that wasn't as supportive of what we were measuring. And they really made sure that the behaviors that we measure were the critical behaviors that could also be developed. But yeah, I mean, the long answer, Ben Palmer can probably give you the whole thesis on some of the research that's come up around this. But it's a very good question, because it's something that you're potentially going to get from clients as well, around that level of importance. But keep your own as you start doing it. What is the highest that you see? What is the lowest? But as I said, for me, my experience, I've not seen anything lower than fairly important in the 5 years that I've worked with the assessment. So,
you know, with this long experience that you have on the field, it's very interesting to hear your insights. So thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. And then looking at the colors, again, you probably know by now what all these mean if you paid attention in class.
Yep.
Just being aligned, yellow areas that we can focus on just for quick alignment, and then those amber, really developmental opportunities. These are, you know, this is the one that gives you the greatest perceptual lens. This is what people are seeing me do. It doesn't mean that I don't possess the skills. It just means I need to demonstrate them in a way that is more visible for other people. Now, we know that people rate us based on what we do, Marta. We rate ourselves based on what we think, what we feel, what we experience, and what we think we should be doing. And so we take all these different contexts as individuals and we put it into one. And I mean, our expectation of ourselves can sometimes be so unreasonable because we just throw everything in there. Sometimes even our childhood experiences impact on the way we rate ourselves. Other people don't have any of that context. And like, what does Marta do? That's what I'm rating her on. They don't rate you based on anything else that they think is going on in your head. And so when you look at the colors, remember it's someone's perception of how they see you doing something, not whether you have the skill or not. It's just how are you demonstrating that skill. And then the item results, important, demonstration and the difference. And we know that the benchmark is an external measure. So the first one is my raters. What is the contextual measure? The benchmark is if I had to walk away from my circle of friends and I had to step into the world, how do I look compared to the rest of the world? Any questions? Yeah, I feel like I could actually ask you to explain all of this already.
It's all clear, and I really like having the two of them because, as we were saying, sometimes expectation may be very high from people, which is great to push you to show up for what you're expected to. But it's also nice to have a bit of a comparison with the benchmark to make you feel a bit better. Like maybe expectations are very high on me, but at least I'm not that far from the rest of the normal people.
Well, and that's always another question. What is normal? When is it good to be within the norm, and when is it okay not to be part of the norm? You're talking about getting your jab. I know I had my jab last week as well, and I'm you're trying to figure out whether you fit within the best norm group or not at this point.
Oh, yes, that's an interesting aspect. This is actually one thing that is got my attention. Right. The consistency of responses, which is low.
Right. So let's first talk about the 5 raters. Tell me a little bit about those 5 raters. Who are they?
So VS are all the other peers in my team, so the other group heads. Now, I think it would have been interested to run the report before when I missed the last two, because I think the reason why the last two were missed for so long, there is a reason. And I would have been curious to see them before and after, but I just wanted to have a view from everybody of the team. So the team is split between Dublin and Hyderabad, so Ireland and India. We do, as you see, the familiarity is very high because we do work as a kind of single team. The team is big, it's 150 people divided between Dublin and Hyderabad, and each one of us has roughly 20, 30, it depends a bit of, if someone leaves, then you have 30 for a while, then you go back to 20 and people. And we work very, that's the aspect. We work closely in certain things, but then it's not really the perspective of the team. So I think different people might have different perspective, really based on what is important to them. And I could see from the comments some of the things I know. So that low consistency, it's from one end a surprise because the group is very homogeneous. So it's not that I picked people, I followed even before doing the course. I went through it and I thought about I don't want to mix my report, people that report to me, my boss and my peers. Let's do all the peers and let's go with it. But yeah, it's interesting. Even with an homogeneous population, I still got a very
right. And it's so what it's going to give you the opportunity to do, Marta, is when you look at the results as well. So let's say you might have a yellow, for instance. One or two raters might have actually seen you demonstrating that as a green. And there might be one or two raters that have seen you, because remember that average of how they've perceived, where they might have rated it as an amber. And so it's pulled it because it's giving us the average score of the rater group. So this is where it's going to challenge you in a good way when you look at your action plan, is you can look at it and go, okay, what am I doing the same for everybody? So across those 5 raters, whether it's a yellow or an amber, what am I doing that's the same for all of them? But if I had to really reflect on how am I possibly doing this behavior or demonstrating this behavior slightly differently for one or two of those individuals, what is it? And what might a specific action step have to be to just bring it into alignment with perhaps the other individuals? So you might be able to guess. I mean, this is sometimes the thing where we kind of know who might have said what. So we kind of know where we've got to tweak, but it's also not so much about who said it. It's more about what is the information telling you. Low consistency means that there is not an alignment between how I'm perceived by one set of raters compared to another set of raters. What do I do to be consistent in how I show up for everybody? And now your development plan or those action steps multiplies. So as opposed to just having one, this is going to work for everyone, it just means that you've got to think a little bit more laterally about how to solve it or what some of the things might be. So it actually opens up the opportunity for you. There's so many more ways that you can actually approach this. And you can almost test what works with this group compared to what's working with that. So it's almost like that I don't know if you've seen MailChimp, but it's a split test. Let's see what works here, what doesn't work here, until you find what actually gives you those productive outcomes. So it just means that we're going to look at the results again, just with a little bit of a different eye, different lens, different perspective, as opposed to if it was high consistency, that everybody feels the same. And so if there was an amber and everybody felt the same, then okay, this is definitely something that I need to consider across the board. So you can look at, so say, pay then attention even to the yellows, because even then it might be an area that you could focus on.
And as you were speaking, one thing came to me, and I thought it before. I had this kind of experience before, particularly as I've been working in this company where everything is remote. And I wrote the word remotely. There is a bit of a discrepancy, and there has always been, on how people perceive me when they see me in the office or when they had seen me in person, or when they just hear me, particularly on the phone. If they see me at least in video conference, it's a bit better. But on the phone, my manager was always surprised of saying, your team says that you don't speak up enough, while I know you as a person that, would always talk. I don't know why they say this, but, remotely on the phone, it's a bit more difficult for me to get the right timing. So this could be a good aspect, how to demonstrate certain behavior more better or clearer in a remote environment. So I think, yeah, that's a good point to keep.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the kind of thing, like you just said, people judge us differently. It's very different when I'm sitting in a room with you, Marta, compared to you and I. I mean, you're literally sitting with a little screen here and you can't read micro expressions, you can't read micro movements. And not just that, we know that virtually you have to put so much more energy into a conversation just to appear normal. If I just speak in a normal tone, like you and I would speak in a meeting, it might appear very drab in a virtual space. Whereas telephonically, we know when the other senses are not engaged, we hear, so we're processing tonality rather than body language and visual cues. So those are all things that you just pointed out. That's what a good insight is, paying attention to how differently you're potentially showing up for those people in those different forums, and how do you bring that into something that could work in different ways so that they still get the same impression.
Sounds good. Already
Right.
we're starting on the right foot.
So let's look at the overall results. So when we look at the overall results, and I just want to point this out again, based on the discussion that we had right in the beginning, if you look at where people, and I know this is a little bit small, but I just want you to look at where people have placed the level of importance. So we've asked 5 other people, listen, how important is it for you that Marta demonstrates these behaviors? These are all between important and highly important. So we know that whatever effort you're going to put in for any mindset changes or any development is going to be towards something that is going to help people feel better about their interaction with you. It's part of what helps put people into that state of feeling with you. Yes, I'm feeling a certain way when I'm with Marta because of the behaviors that she demonstrates. Then I'm just going to zoom in. So I'm going to ask, I know you mentioned authenticity as one, where you were quite happy to see the results that were displayed in authenticity. From a time perspective, if we could only look at one of these competencies, normally with coaching, I might say, hey, listen, today we're going to look at self-awareness and we're just going to focus on that. But if you had to pick just one for our session, which one would you like to have a look at?
So looking at this, I will surely pick self-management just because it's the only one that says 5 out of 5 as importance. And this means, despite the low consistency, everybody voted 5 as importance. So this really, I think, speak for the culture, maybe also for the role. But as I'm going higher in the company, even if I'm not having people below me somehow, I think this is the result that came out for me, like 5 out of 5. So
right. And if you think about what the productive state was for self-management, it's resilience. And if you think about self-management and resilience, just reflecting on your team, why would resilience be important for your team to see in you?
First of all, to lead by examples. And it means so many things at so different level. It might mean being able to deal with changes, being able to deal with pressure, time management. I know in some of the comment time management and came up as something. So it kind of encompasses, comprehend a lot of different behaviors that, partially self-awareness as well, because you can't manage what you are not aware of. So somehow there is also that piece. And really, I think it's very important as an individual for yourself, manage your time, manage your deliverables, and as an inspiring leader. So probably that's why it's important for everybody. We are all in that position of leadership, and everybody else deemed that important. I guess for me, as for themselves, generally you assess the importance, I guess, around 360,
yes.
particularly in the same position. So,
and it gives us insight into what, as you said, what's important for other people. What are some of their values? What do they expect to see in me? Because we know that people look to a leader. If my leader is resilient, you know what? Even if I'm struggling, I know that I can do it because I've got something to model. So let's jump to self-management and then have a look at at each of these scores. So just looking at the 7 behaviors, just have a look at the scores. I know you had an opportunity to quickly look at the 7 behaviors, and then there is also that one qualitative comment which you mentioned about the time. And then just tell me what insight you get looking at these results. What stands out for you?
So overall, I see room for improvement because almost everything is at the verge of a 1 or below. And again, this would be very different if we would split probably the result kind of by people. There might be a sea of red on one area and more green on others. But that point manages their time effectively, which is below benchmark, very big gap, clearly recognized as important, and that will be probably the source and the solution of other things. And the second one, which is different but helpful, is that response effectively in stressful situation, which is very important for management. And I think it ties into the other score that was my lowest, that is awareness of other, that I think was 3.7, probably the lowest score there. So maybe there are a couple of, areas or a couple of actions that would, in this area that would affect other things as well. Maybe having the time to manage my meetings, for example, just something as we did here, taking that 1 hour before the preparation of a meeting to put yourself in the mindset. Couldn't that be something with a time management that is more effective before a meeting where you need, that can be challenging? Can you take that 15 minutes, half an hour before that to tune in with yourself and what's going to happen, so you manage more effectively stressful situation that may arise? Things like this could be a good things to look into.
Okay, so let's create, because now you've mentioned that could be a good action. Let's put it into what it would look like practically. So what are some of the kinds of meetings that you have where people would need some time to prepare for it? How often do you have those?
So I do, that's interesting, because I do try already my best to have a decent schedule, for example, differently from other people in the team, because when I joined, I was kind of shadowing the others to get ideas of how they were managing. Some people just really take meetings as they come when people ask. Well, for me, I already tried to, for example, put the most important meetings on the Tuesdays, because early in the week I'm a bit more fresh. And the one that are more informal and things like that, maybe over Wednesday and Thursday, because they require a bit less. So I already tried to do that bit of triage where I can, obviously. But maybe, so I would say for others, every 1-1 is very important to be prepared for. I try to keep my 1-1, for example, 45 minutes and 15 minutes gap, and 15 minutes gap too. Have that break, but between one thing and another, one person run late, and rather than using that time to focus for my next meeting, for example, I use it to bio break, refill the water. It's more keep me going. Maybe I should consider to have a break of half an hour, for example, so that I can do both those 10 minutes of logistics and that was other 10, 15 minutes in preparation. So that could be maybe consider when I do the kind of back-to-backs, 30 minutes break. That could be an idea. And then identify clearly, like when I have a leadership meeting where I could, I might need to have an impact to have that. So identify healthy meeting that require 15 minutes prep or more or whatever, like that require prep without putting the time. So maybe at the beginning of the week when I try, because I generally look at the week ahead, because there are invitations for 10 different meetings at the same time, and I try to clear saying yes, no, maybe, move. I should schedule those breaks. So when I look at week, put breaks in meeting preparation breaks prep break in calendar. So that could be an idea that is in between, probably it's between both, managing time and also preparing for, stressful situation.
Okay, so right, you're going to put those breaks in. Now I'm going to throw a scenario at you. So let's say you've put that half an hour break in, and it's good to do that. It's good to test, is this going to work? Is it going to be enough time for me? How would you handle it? So let's say you've got half an hour to the next meeting, and then someone arrives and says, oh, Marta, can I have a discussion with you?
I will have to probably postpone that to after the meeting and, be disciplined. That's the other aspect. So I already have, and this is something I set up a long time ago, a 1 hour open hour office every day. That is basically the one fit all for any type of problem. If someone needs to talk to me, to try to, put everything in that slot, to avoid having all these meetings ad hoc and people running toward you, unless it's very urgent. There are health things, those couple of things are no-brainer, you need to manage, but all the rest. So disciplined in use of open hour office. Or maybe I could do, and this is a good idea if I change the time zone now, because I will be working with US, because at the moment my open hour office is in the morning. So it's good for a general booking, but it doesn't work if something happened during the day. Because if something happened during the day, I can't really postpone you to tomorrow. It's a bit too much. So maybe it would be nice to have the open hour office or something like a buffer for emergencies. And to the end of the day, I use the Friday as that day, so it's meeting free theoretically, but obviously something happens, I can. So maybe I should do that, like move open our office end of the day, or have something.
And then how will you communicate that to other people? So you're setting it up, and it's good that you're aware of it. Like you say, someone's going to come in, you're going to postpone. You're going to ask if you postpone. Have you, do you have a standard response for that? So if I come to you and I say, oh, I need to meet with you, because we know sometimes people come to us and the perception is that it's super urgent when it's not really. But how do you get that message then, or how do you relay that message to the person to say, we can't meet now,
Oh, that's interesting. I think the key here, and I wrote one word, is consistency, because you don't want to be perceived as, I'm pushing back on you, but not on him, or, so I really needed to consider this as, clear priority in terms of the type of requests. So I do have something in terms of my preferred way of communicating and what is appropriate where, and I have a slide already that is part of my kind of welcome package to my team. And so obviously, I do not expect hard boundaries, but just I did that to prepare for what you can expect. So maybe having a relook, for sure, now that I change a role, have that one done for the new role. Because preferred communication ways, because if people know what to expect already, they get less upset about it, because it's like, look, sorry, this is not really something I want to discuss on I'd rather have an email on this. It happened to me a couple of times, because IMs are something for a quick communication, but if I need to take a decision, I want it on the email recorded and saved. And as I circulated this quite regularly, every, twice a year during the meetings, I will show it. Oh, there is a lot of new people. Let's revisit quickly this. So I think that, so preparing for it, and consistency. That might be one thing that I might have to improve, because sometimes you have also a feeling of some people, you would be a bit more open to take their issues, either because you're more friendly to them, or because they have generally a very good self-control. And so that's the part where it gets difficult. I think I did well with the prep, already. I just need to keep doing. The consistency of a day, you know, it depends. There are people that you like to talk to and people you don't like to talk
to. Right. So that's interesting now. So, I mean, it's easy, like you said, it's easy to talk to the people that are easy to talk to. How often, or what are you doing? So especially if you want to appear as consistent, it means that it's consistent with everyone, especially if you've got different raters that are perceiving things slightly differently. So what are you doing, or what can you put in place that is a consistent way of doing it to connect with each of those individuals one-on-one, as opposed to having that open hour where people can just come to you?
So maybe the other thing is to make sure, this is something I did at the beginning, particularly with my peers, and I stopped doing after a while due to lack of time, is to have the regular connect. And that's so important, to be honest, because then you can, even with lack of consistency on a daily basis, if it happens, you can manage and somehow repair in those recurrent meetings, because, you know, you might say, look, last week I was so stressed, it was this and that going on, and people will forgive you somehow if it's timely. I can't go 6 months later and say I didn't answer to your email 3 months ago because you know, my grandmother passed, even personal things, you know. So that's, yeah, probably you can't be 100% consistent on a daily basis, and you can't expect that for yourself, but maybe putting some repair opportunities. So have a recurrent meeting.
You know, and sometimes it's also just having those basic meetings. You know, if you look at positive influence was one of them, you know, where we're having activities that are not necessarily always a work discussion. It's just, hey, let's have lunch together, even if it's a virtual lunch, you know, whatever it might be, different ways to connect with people, as you've said now, where that if you have that day where things are falling, the wheels are falling off, people are far more likely, as you said, to forgive you the week after or within that week than 3 or 6 months down the line, Marta. So that's a very good insight there in terms of, you know, what will people permit, but also based on what you were saying, we know that the brain is a certainty-seeking machine. So by repeating, and it's one of the things, even in the Patrick Lencioni book that he talks about, is you've got to keep communicating clarity. You've got to over-communicate clarity. So like you were saying, some of these things that you're putting in place, think about how you can keep communicating it, because that certainty actually gives comfort to people within the organization. It's that predictability that our brains are looking for. We like predictability, even though we might not necessarily outwardly agree with it. Our brain is looking for that. I want to know when I can do what, and what are the rules within which I can do that. So you've got to, I mean, if you've got a few items there. So let's summarize the benefits, because this is really, you were talking about the mindset. It's all good for us to have all these actions, but part of the mindset is also the heart set. You know, to what degree do I want to do these things? And it will often be connected to what I see the potential benefit is for doing it. So if you were able to put all these, so imagine in your mind that you were able to put all these things in place and it was all working, because it's also good for us to almost predict in our minds, or get our minds to predict what we want the outcomes to be. What would those outcomes look like for you?
I think, and you mentioned it as you were talking, it's very important to me, the consistency of what I do. So knowing what's happening, what will happen, and having those kind of safety net to fall onto regularly would be, I think, very helpful for me, because I do have this need of being organized and knowing where to. So this is probably the best in terms of a positive outcome. I have to say that as I was going through the report, there was a kind of potential threat that I saw in this, but it was this lack of consistency on action, maybe, or I saw a comment like, there is a lot of enthusiasm, but it fades away when it comes to the action. That is something that in the long run might impact my authenticity, which is very dear to me. So the two things, it's one on one hand, a bit of a threat of what I have and is important. And on the other, I could achieve even more consistency, stability, and that will give me room, I guess, to manage better the difficult situation. Because if I have a lot of safety nets, and I know, then I could maybe experiment a bit more. I could, manage things in a different way, even risking it a bit more, because it might work, it might not. But if it doesn't, I fall here and not on the ground, because I would recuperate. So that's important. I do not like to, obviously you try to make yourself lean and to remove all maybe this is what I need to kind of rewire my brain to consider these things as important, rather than, because when you have a busy schedule, and so you start to say, why do I need this this person, I know them, I'd rather skip instead of doing it monthly. Let's do it bi-monthly, let's do it quarterly, let's do it every 6 months, let's stop doing it, yeah, I think here I can use the positive experience that I had with a set of people, where I kept going with this monthly thing, even if sometimes we have nothing to say, but they are very eyes up, they are stakeholders, so it's not people that I ask for the rating to. But over the past 2 years, that worked a charm. Like the first year, it was all business, business, business. Now it's like 15 minutes business and 15 minutes chit chat. But it's important to keep this. And as I'm passing the portfolio to the new person that is taking over for me, and say, look, you might go bi-monthly if you really, really want, every 2 months, but I will not recommend it. I will keep it monthly. If they cancel, fine. But and make sure to do 15 minutes business if you can, and 15 minutes. You either close it early, or you keep it. So I should apply that same lesson to me. We are always better in passing lessons to others that apply them to themselves. So that could be a good example where it worked. GPCH meeting, apply principle.
And now I'm gonna just twist this on its side just slightly. So what is important for you. I mean, you've got some ideas of what it is that you want to do and how it will benefit you. To what degree would you need to get input or feedback from other people as to how this might impact them to ensure that they stay in a productive state?
So I think I could, trim down this to 3 actions, and maybe divide the one that will be helpful for me in the future and the one would have been helpful in this role. And as these peers are all from this role, maybe share with them the idea of what I think could be working. And it's a good time point, because they will be honest about that I'm leaving anyways. So to see if they have any additional idea, or how they take certain things. They might say, look, maybe meeting on a monthly basis is too much, too little. Let's meet I would recommend every 2 weeks. I would recommend once a year. So it could be interesting to share. And I think this is part at the end, when you send the thank you letter, it could be something I would like to add, those couple of actions that I would have liked to do, or I would like, it's more I would have liked to do, because they know I'm leaving in 1 month. So, and really get their feedback, or maybe put the action I'm also thinking for the next role, and get their suggestion. They are familiar with the role I'm going to take, so it's not something they have no clue what might require. So it could be an helpful thing also to add and to ask their feedback. And they are vocal, so they are peers, they are people that don't have issues saying what they think. So I guess it will be a good experience for both of us.
Yes, and that's part of, now you've started engaging some of the other elements or competencies, because it is emotional reasoning. It's getting a different perspective. Is there something that or an idea that one of them might just have that we haven't even explored, where you're suddenly going, oh, okay, there's the solution. Or yes, they can confirm what it is that you're working on. And when we've shared these kinds of things with people, it's a lot easier to then get the support. Or often it gives them understanding of like, okay, now I understand why she does that way, or why it is set this way. and, you know, probably be able to support you in communicating that to other people, because you've kind of had that opportunity to bounce it off them. Marta, we've literally just touched on like self-management. So you've really got the opportunity to go through the rest of the report and do the same thing. Go and look at it with those eyes of being curious. You know, what am I learning here? What am I seeing? What are some of the things that I can do? Use your development tips workbook alongside the report. See what the tips are, you know, respond effectively in stressful situations. Ask yourself the question, what are some of the ways in which I respond? You know, what is my intention when I respond? What might different people be seeing? Who could I be asking for feedback on how to respond? Or what are some of the techniques that I can now learn, you know, taking a breath before responding, you know, or think about, as you said, exactly the same way you put a framework in place for managing your time. What is your framework for managing stress? So the next time it comes up, was there a time where perhaps I came across a little bit more temperamental, but actually I was trying to be passionate? You know, how was it perceived differently? So you've got a really rich opportunity to go through all the results, and I mean, qualitative comments, to go and read those. But here's the other challenge for you is when you read the qualitative comments, read them as positive statements. Now, we know our brain tends to go and say, hey, you know, there's a comment that, oh, I don't quite know about that comment. If you feel yourself going into that state when you're reading a comment, just pause and say, okay, now I'm going to read it in my positive head voice, as if it's a compliment, and see how it changes meaning for you. Does it change meaning for you? And how does it change the way you think about it? And then what it is that you can do about it. So with the feedback, and I'm going to get you to summarize just what we've gone through purely for self-management, your biggest insight. I mean, you've got a few action steps there, your benefit, and then, you know, as I said, we can probably carry on and do the rest of the report. There is just so much in here for you. But what would be your key insight or comment on what you've just been through?
I think I can really turn some of the action into my strengths when I want. So if there is one thing, for example, you know, about maybe communicating via email, that is something I might not particularly like, but and drags me that I might have to do it. But, you know, I might, with a bit of thought, come up with solutions that really plays into my strength rather than having to do what I'm supposed to do. I just need to not be afraid to face the problem and try to come up with creative solutions, because there are plenty. You know, we just sat on here. Obviously, you helped me a lot as well, but part of this I might be able to do it by myself as well, with a bit of time of reflection, and I can do it in a way that energizes me. So I need to keep in mind that tackling a problem or you know, some challenges or some feedback that are not you're doing great could be fun as well, and interesting for my brain. I like to find solutions. So that, I think that is the key part, because when you look at this and you see a lot of yellows and a lot of red, it's like, what do I have to do? What I have to put myself through that I don't want to do? Well, instead you can come up with a solution that works actually for you and maybe for the others, and then ask that feedback. Would be a, you know, two-way street as you implement things.
Absolutely. And so if you look at your goal right in the beginning, it was, you know, you wanted a mindset change about something and you wanted some action steps. So to what degree do you feel that you have met your goal?
I think this mindset of taking, you know, any kind of challenge as an opportunity to find a solution that suits me, it really changes a lot of how I see things, I will see things, and the actions fit well into it, and as well also the loop. So I got actually a bit more, because this additional system of having the action, sending them out, getting the feedback is something I didn't think I, you know, would establish as a possible way of behaving at the end of the session. So I got the mindset, I got the action, and I got a bit more. So what can I say? Over delivering all the way, Crystal.
And so, I mean, that just brings us to the feedback, which is really, this is where the power lies. It's so you can come up with all these great action steps, etc. But it's going back to people and saying thank you, you know, regardless of what the scores say, making sure that those raters get that acknowledgement. Thank you for giving me this gift of insight, because you've just been given an extra 5 set of eyes through which you can see yourself. And then, you know, going and asking for additional feedback. You're going to bounce some of those ideas off different people. As you said, now's a good time. You're transitioning. What are some of the new things or extra things that you can take with you into the new role that you're going to be moving into? You know, if there are examples, tell me about a time I did that really well, or tell me about a time where I could have done it a bit better than perhaps I had at the time. Then open probing questions. That's always the big thing. Make sure that you ask, if you're not sure about something, open-ended questions. So tell me about a time, or can you describe a time when? Allowing people to think about something that works, or sharing an example of something that worked for you. And then that accountability. This is where sharing becomes the accountability factor, because when we start talking to other people about our insights, some of the actions that we're wanting to take, we tend to be more responsible in how we actually take on those tasks. We have someone else, those eyes are holding us accountable, because now other people know what it is that I'm going to try. And so that also potentially helps with your consistency that you're wanting to achieve. And then if you need to, any follow-ups, you know, so if there's someone that you're following up with, to always follow up with that additional follow-up, and not just say, hey, we're going to have feedback and then not follow up. Because most cases people are waiting for you to come back and say, hey, you said we're going to chat about it. They won't come to you and say, hey, it's been 3 months. They're waiting for you to come back and say, remember we had that discussion. I'd love to have a chat about it again. So just following up on that. Marta, when you've looked at all of that, you know, you've also got the opportunity to go and have a look at your own scores. You can do the comparison. I recommend that before you come to this, first go and work through the rest of your report, come up with something that's very clear, that just, you know, where you've got those insights, and some of them will be intercorrelated anyway. And then come and have a look to see, well, why is it that I scored something a 3 and someone else scored it a 3.8? Where is there a difference in what I thought was important compared to what other people feel are important, or how well I'm demonstrating? Again, remember, it's what people see you do. Doesn't mean that you don't possess the skills. It's just, how can I tweak it so you can actually see that I'm demonstrating these behaviors? So in conclusion, what are your thoughts? Do you have any questions for me?
Not like, honestly, I think it was so clear, everything, and how we went through it. I really thank you for your help and support here, because, you know, the questions were right, and they really prompted me to get out of this even more of what I expected. Obviously, I had expectation to get a good set of actions and some insights, because I know the system works and I trust it. But thank you so much, and also your energy, your enthusiasm. It's like the first time you do it in terms of a passion that you put in it. And I know it's not the first time you do it, but thank you. It has been a very good experience. I really appreciate it.
You're absolutely welcome, and I look forward to meeting up with you again next week.
Yes.
All the best with your preparation.
The other way around. Can I get the recording? Because I think even, you know, how you explained part of the science, you know, I'm a scientist, so I do appreciate this stuff. But look, with a second pair of eyes, it was fantastic. That's something I said also to Derek. I think the way you delve into science without going too much, that can, you know, raise questions if you have another audience. It's perfect for someone that is in the field and wants to hear about that, but without, you know, dragging you into too much. So nice, I love it. I would like to listen of how you do things, because it's very nice, human, personal touch, very present. Thank you so much.
You are absolutely welcome.
Of an hour.
I will just convert the recording and I'll get it through to you a little bit later.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome, Marta. All the best.
I wish you a good rest of the day. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.